And awesome, beautiful. Oh, Patricia, good. All right. And then Virginia. Okay, guys. Well, okay, now actually 3:01. So I know we can't forget that Martin is Swiss. So if we start 1 minute late, he'll start crying because it's built into his DNA. So
you know, I did my PhD in Spain, and then after 5 years, spending in Barcelona, I came back to Switzerland, and all my Swiss friends were like, "Martin, what happened? Why you're always late?"
That's right. That's right. The,
Yes.
the most timely to Spain. Oh my gosh, Spain. When you say meet at 8 a.m., that means before noon.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Martin, I'll turn it
Great.
over to you. Everybody's ready.
With pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
With pleasure. So, welcome everybody. It's a real pleasure to have you around, and thank you, Stanton and Phuket Clans, for organizing this. I think it's a really good idea to keep this kind of community alive, at least in the possible way we can do here online. Now, before we dive in, I think we are all a bit tired of this zooming around and being, how we call it, social distancing. And so what I would like to do today is I would like to do a distant socializing. Okay, I want to switch that around. I want that we try to feel like connected today as much as is possible through this kind of technology. So everybody who wants to turn on the camera, feel free to do it. You don't have to, but I think it's nice to see each other. If somebody has a question, raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask the question. And for those who don't feel like showing themselves, there is a chat function, I think. So I just gonna open that, say hello, everybody, and maybe everybody can quickly write where you're from, because I think it's cool to see, like, we have now here 20 people, and I'm just curious, like, where you're logging in from. And I think this is one amazing aspect of the whole thing, of like staying connected in this really hard time in this very special moment of today's world. Singapore, England, Melbourne, wow, all around the world. That's so cool. London, so I'm based in Zurich at the moment. Also, we are in a lockdown, like everybody. Dublin, Kuala Lumpur, Australia. I think that's so wonderful. I think that's really cool to see, like, it's possible to also make, as I said before to you, Stanton, like make the best out of the worst. Cape Town, but I'm here in Phuket. Well, I'm jealous, Jenny. So anyhow, I hope soon we can go back to Phuket and we can give us like real hugs again, and that this is over. But in the meantime, we keep it to this. So I prepared something, and I'm happy to share with you some slides. Stanton, I think we have approximately an hour. Is that correct? Okay. So today I would like to talk with you about mindset. Could somebody quickly tell me if you see my screen? Because I don't know sometimes if it works. Okay, you see my screen. Just the screen, not the preview. That's correct. Yeah. All right. So today I would like to talk with you about mindset, and not just from a neuroscientific point of view, that's like where I'm coming from, but also how to change your mind for the better. So it's about you today. It's about like what you can do and how you can like work on your mindset. And in order to do that, you need a paper and a pen, okay? So now it's the moment to run, to get something to write, because we're gonna work on your mindset. We're going to twist it and transform it and make sure that hopefully it's better after this hour than before. So it's good if you have something to write. It's not a must. You can just watch if you want, but I think you will get more out of it if you do something actively. So how do we organize the webinar? What's the setup? As I said, it's interactive. please, if you have a question, remember when you were in Phuket Clans, just ask, you know, raise your hand, unmute yourself, write it in the chat. I ask Stanton to watch the chat if somebody asks a question, because maybe I don't see it. Like, let's try to make it as interactive as possible. So it's really not that it's just like a one-way TV show. So like, bring yourself in if you have something popping up in your mind. Then pen and paper, if you haven't done it already or got it, and we will always have time for Q&A. So in the end or during, just ask if something is on your mind. Quickly about me before we dive in. Some of you know me. I was at Phuket Clans like some months ago, a wonderful time. I did my PhD in neuroscience. So I studied the brain and I tried to understand how the brain processes emotion and stress. So how does stress affect our behavior or our learning, our social interaction? What does it do to us? That was my PhD topic. I also have a lot of experience in media production. So I studied film next to it. I did my films by myself. I love storytelling, and you will see later why this is important. So I somehow naturally brought the two topics together, and they are very much connected, as you will see. And today I work mainly as a mental coach and keynote speaker. I do like workshops like in Phuket Clans on the topic of mindset, resilience. As I said, I'm based in Zurich, but normally if there is no lockdown, I do this all around the world. So if somebody is interested, just let me know, shoot me a message or check out, I will put at the end my contact info, like where you can find me online. Now, as I said, today I would like to focus on your mindset, on your story. And before we dive in, please take a moment, take your piece of paper and think for a minute maybe, what do you want to work on today? What is on your mind? What would you like to focus in the next hour on? Is there a certain topic or challenge or maybe something in your heart that you're struggling with that you would like to focus on today? Or maybe what mindset do you want to get rid of or do you want to cultivate? Are there certain kind of thought patterns that you observe that you're like, hey, wait, this is maybe not so useful for me. Maybe I want to change that. Or maybe you would like to cultivate some kind of mindset more. So just take a moment and maybe something pops naturally up and write it down. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't come like right away. Maybe it will come later, so don't stress yourself. That's totally normal. But I assume in this not so easy time, everybody has like something on their mind or heart to work on. So if I'm too fast, also later when we do the writing exercise, just let me know. You can always write in the chat or so if you need more time. Now, I structured my talk or my webinar in a way that I first want to tell you a little bit about me and about my story and what I learned out of it. I have included a lot of neuroscience, like what you can take away from how the brain works or how it doesn't work. And then a lot of writing, a lot about what you can do. Now, I told you that I did my PhD on neuroscience and stress, on emotions, and that I can say I probably know quite a bit about like how stress works and how emotions are working in the brain. Anyhow, some years ago, I had a dramatic life-changing moment that showed me that actually knowledge is pretty much overrated. It was approximately 8 years ago when I got out of the blue. I found myself in the hospital. I thought I was healthy before, all fine, all perfect. But then one day I found myself in ER, emergency room. And shortly later, some months later, I got diagnosed with a very aggressive type of pancreatic cancer. So as you know, pancreatic cancer is not the best cancer you can get. It has a very slim survival rate. And so I went online. Obviously, I wanted to know what I have. I started to Google around, and I was shocked when I read like how few people survive this type of cancer. And so obviously it was a huge shock. I was totally floored. I was completely overwhelmed. But it was also a moment when I realized that knowledge is overrated. What do I mean? I just had a PhD in stress and emotions, and like I knew everything what was going on in my mind, but then I had no clue how to cope with this situation. And it was the first time in my life that I realized you can know a lot, but it doesn't mean that you can live it. So why do I tell you this story? Because we all know a lot. Like what we're gonna write today here on this paper, it's probably not very new. And so what we try to do today is to translate this knowledge into action, because the knowledge doesn't help you very much if it just stays on a theoretical level. And so I got really obsessed with transferring knowledge into action, like helping people to do that. So the first conclusion that I want to share with you today is like knowledge is totally overrated. Totally. I mean, we can also find interesting examples of this COVID moment. You probably saw this talk from Bill Gates from like 5 years ago when he was on a TED stage announcing that we are not ready for the next pandemic. I mean, that was 5 years ago, and it was interesting because he was laying out, and he was not the only one. It's not about him or anybody else, but there were people saying we should get ready. We knew that, but somehow we were not getting into action. So back then, when I had to go through my first treatment, I myself got into action. I had a funny idea, or maybe funny is not the right word, a little bit a crazy idea. So during one of my first chemo, I decided, because it was a bit a hard moment, and I was like, what should I do? Like, what happens when this is over? What do I want to do with my life? So I got this crazy idea that I signed myself up in the middle of a chemo for a triathlon. I was literally like in the hospital connected to this infusion, and then I picked my mobile phone, and while I was in the hospital, I was like getting my starting number. What I have to add to this crazy idea is that I never did a triathlon before. I did not even like running. I knew how to swim because I was in a swim club when I was a teenager. I was not very sporty, but I was just like, okay, if I get here alive, I'm gonna do that. So it was the moment where I turned like an idea into a small step, into an action. And so I want to share with you a photo that back then I just made this as a, how should I say, I thought it's just another selfie, and today this became a very symbolic photo. So this is me approximately 7-8 years ago in the hospital. And this, what you see, this is the gym of the hospital. So they had this gym room for like when people had like hip replacements and this kind of surgeries. And I found that out, somebody told me, and I said, look, okay, now that I have my starting bit for this triathlon, I have to train. So I walked down with my infusion bag. And so what you see here, this is not the natrium chloride. So this is my chemo. And I walked into this room, and the guy who had to take care of all the patients, he wanted to tell me, look, guy, you're wrong here. Like, oncology department is like on the 7th floor. And I was like, no, I want to come here and train. I mean, I say train because I think I was probably 5 minutes on this home trainer, and then I was completely sweaty. But still, this like 5 minutes became one of the most important trainings for myself up until today. Why? Because it was so symbolic. It was like such a small step, but it was such a symbolic step into the right direction. And so what I learned from this, like transferring the knowledge into action, is that there is no step that is too small. Like the only step that is too small is no step at all. And that is something that a lot of people don't get. They see me today, I'm very fit, I run marathons and longer distances, I do a lot of sports, and they see me and they say, look, Martin, I can never do what you're doing. And I say, wait, you're too much obsessed of like this big mountain on this, like, okay, I have to reach this finish line. I think people should more focus on the starting line, like what we are doing today. It's if you make today one small step into the right direction, think about it, then you're already further than yesterday. And if you do this every day, at one time, you will cross the finish line. So conclusion number 2, no step is too small. That is really something that you can take to your heart. Like always focus on the process, never focus on the performance. I think we live in a society that is obsessed with performance. Like, I don't know, how much money did you earn? How much likes did you get? How much, I don't know, gym hours did you do? It's always performance. And I think the process, like if you're able to focus on the process, on the long term, you will be much, much better off than if you're obsessed with the performance. So this was my starting point into the career, what I'm doing today. As I said, maybe just to conclude my story, it has now been 8 years. My cancer became kind of stable. It comes back, it's chronic, but it's not aggressive anymore. I became super sporty. I love it. It's not to show off. I just love like to move my body because it gives me a kind of a feeling of security. It's like my way of coping with my fear. And the doctors, they tell me, look, we don't know what you're doing, but just keep on doing it. And so I will do that. And I'm convinced that it's possible to make a positive change that like stabilizes your life. Also, if in the beginning, it's just 5 minutes on this home trainer. Now, as I said before, I also studied filmmaking and media production and storytelling. Now, why is this important? Because your brain, and that's something that will help you a lot, also to understand your own mindset and your own life, is a storytelling machine. Your brain loves stories. So all the time, every day, your brain is making up stories. It perceives the world, and based on what you perceive, you make this kind of construct, and then you think that's reality. But in the end, your brain is just a storytelling production. And unfortunately, the storytelling film production or whatever production is not working in the documentary section. So it's more in the horror movies, you know, like, oh, this is going to happen on this. So I brought with me some very nice examples to show you how much our brain loves stories. So this first project is from Rob Walker, and it's called Significant Objects. So he was going, that was some years ago, he's a journalist, he went to eBay and he bought like 100 objects that you can see some of them here on eBay, and each object had like a value of approximately $1, okay? And then he took the objects and he went to all his writer friends and journalists and asked them to write a story about the objects. So they did that, they wrote 100 stories. Stories about families, stories about magic powers of the objects, about history, like they made up any kind of stories. And they went back to eBay with the same objects and they sold the objects together with the stories. So all in all, in the beginning, he was spending $120 for the 100 objects. Now I'm just curious, what do you think, for how much did he sell all the objects, the 100 objects together with the stories? If anybody has an idea, you can share it in the chat. The objects were exactly the same. Thousands of pounds. $2,000, 10,000 pounds, 20K, 4K. So $4,000. So you were pretty good. Like the people were willing to pay much more if the object suddenly had a story. Why do I show you this project? Because I think it shows in a very hands-on way, like how much our brain is attracted to stories. We know that from advertisement, but I think this is like a beautiful exemplification of this phenomenon. What we also have to understand is that stories are much older than written language. So our brain learned to structure information earlier in stories than we started to what you're doing now, to write down like notes. What you see here on the left are some cave paintings in the south of France. They are approximately 30,000 years old. And on the right side, you see one of the earliest scriptures, the hieroglyphs. It's not the oldest one. The Sumerian is a bit older, but it's more or less the same. It's around 3,500 years old. The Sumerian is 5,000 years old. So on the left side, we see representation of 30,000 years old, and on the right side, around 3,000. So what does it mean? It means that our brain first started to think and process information in stories. Like stories is like the grammar, the syntax of how our brain, it's like the computer system when you install a new OS or Microsoft or so. It's not the hardware, it's like stories is like how we process the whole input that our brain is getting. So we started first to think in stories, and then we started to write. Now stories also have a function. What are the functions actually? They have multiple functions. One side, it helps, stories help us to understand. Think back in your school time when you had a complex topic or you had to learn something. It was always very useful if you had a story around. You could like better get the interrelationship between the things. So stories really help us to structure the information. Stories help us to memorize things. We all know that. We have been there. You go to a party, you have 20 people, and then they say, "Yeah, hello, I'm Stanton, I'm Andrea, I'm Gina," like, and then after a while, like, "Oh, who was this person? What was her name?" Like, and so if you tell a story yourself while getting introduced to the people, it's easier to memorize the names. So it helps us to memorize information. And stories help us for communication. It's much easier to communicate and get your point across if you tell a coherent story. You know that if you meet people who are just into the clouds and they switch topics all the time, it's very hard to follow them. On the other side, if somebody has a structured way of sharing a story, it's much easier to follow and also to remember what the person was telling. So stories is really something, and it has a lot to do with mindset, because mindset in the end is just like a way of how you tell yourself a story. So mindset is an accumulation of what story you were telling yourself and what story you will tell yourself. It's like based on where you grew up, in which culture, in which religion, you acquire a certain kind of attitudes and beliefs and like how the world should be. This is a kind of a storytelling. Why is this important? It is important because it actually matters a lot which story you tell yourself. And that's what we're gonna do today when we like write more about your story. It matters which story you tell. And it's a very easy way to change your mindset in the way that you change the story you tell yourself. Now, before we go into the practical part, I want to show you one study that I just love because it shows so good, like how much it matters which story you tell. It's from Alaya Crum, and she was working with cleaning personnel. So they asked them, like, how much workout do you do per week? And they were all saying, like, we don't work out, we don't go to the gym because we have to clean the whole day. And so they made two groups. One group was called the Work is Work group, and the other, the Work is Exercise group. So the Work is Work group, they just kept on cleaning the rooms in the hotels. And the other group, they got actually an education explaining them, look, when you clean a room, when you move around and you clean the windows or you like vacuum clean, it's kind of doing yoga or you go to the gym. So you're actually burning a lot of calories. So like what you consider is just work is actually exercise. And that's the whole thing they did. They didn't change anything else. They let the two groups continue with the work, and after some months, they measured again their physiological parameters. And what it turned out is that the Work is Work group didn't change at all. They were like exactly the same weight, they had the same blood pressure, while the Work is Exercise, they lost 2 pounds, and the blood pressure, the systolic blood pressure, went down by 10 points. And they controlled for like if the people went to the gym. This is just one study that shows, some people then say, yeah, that's just the placebo effect. But I always like to say, yeah, it is the placebo effect, or it is the mind-setting effect. And it's just one example of many. There are other studies that show similar results, like that people get the arm, like when you break your arm, you get it into a cask, or how you say it. And so they made two groups. And one group just had the arm in a cask, and the other group was mentally like training with weights. Of course, they couldn't move the arm, but they were mentally training. And after some weeks, they measured the strengths of the two groups, and the group that mentally was training was stronger. So your mindset and the story you tell is not just that you maybe feel better, you feel more optimistic, or you feel more hopeful. It also affects your physiology. And I'm really excited that this kind of studies exist, because this is what I experienced myself with my story. I'm 100% convinced that I can positively infect my physiology through my mindset. It's not that I'm always capable of doing that. And I don't think when we're not capable of telling us a better story, we should be harsh with ourselves, because that also has a negative effect. But at least I try. And seeing such kind of stories or such kind of scientific publications, it's actually nice to see that it's not just something that we think it's true, but you can actually measure. So the third conclusion in this way is it really matters which story you tell yourself. It really does. So that's what we're gonna do now. We're gonna look at your story, and we're gonna work a bit on how you can change your story. So the first thing that I would like to do is you take a fresh piece of paper, and we're gonna take our time for 3 minutes. So we're gonna write constantly for 3 minutes. And what is important is that you kind of turn off your censorship agency up here, okay? So it's really trying to get into a flow of just writing for 3 minutes constantly. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make 2 pages. So the first page, we're gonna start with, I have to. And so every sentence, I'm gonna take the time. Every sentence that you're gonna start with, you start with I have to. Okay, so you write I have to, and then something pops up. I have to, and the only rule that we have is you're not allowed to stop. You just write and write and write and write. Okay, so I'm gonna take my time, my Swiss clock with Spanish timing here. And I'm gonna play some music. So let's see if you can hear that. Can you hear that? I don't know if it's okay. So the time starts now. And try to not stop. Just try to keep the pen moving. And every sentence for 3 minutes. If you think 3 minutes is easy, it's long, believe me. So just keep writing. I have to. I have to. You can, one question, focus on our goals. Whatever pops up. You will see when you write for 3 minutes, after a while, you think it's empty, you think like nothing else is coming. And you just will need more, how do you say, topics. So it will be chaotic at one point. I have to. What do you have to? What pops up on your mind? You have to be better, bigger. What do you really have to? Just keep the pen moving. Probably sometimes stuff comes up that makes no sense. That's all fine. Just keep it moving. What do you have to? Maybe stuff pops up that you are surprised. Fine. What do you have to? We're not going to share this, so you can be completely open. It's just for you. We'll go for 1 other minute. What do you have to? Maybe something at home, at work, to relationships, love, with your health, with your food, your boss. What do you have to? What do you really have to? Then you struggle with something pops up, it's fine, just the first thing that comes in your mind, no censorship. As I said, I'm not going to share it. Alright, I give it another 10 seconds. 5, what do you have to? 3, and the Swiss clock is stopping. So, it's probably a bit exhausting. Probably you have now some stuff on your piece of paper like, oh wow, what was that? Now we give it a little break. We're gonna do it a second time. And now please take a new piece of paper. So take the one you had to the left. Don't use the back side. Take a new one, take a new piece of paper. And we're gonna do the same thing, but now every time you start the sentence, you start it with I want to. Okay? So I put the clock again. Let's see if I find a new song. Okay, time starts now. And the same exercise. I want to. What do you want? What do you really want? No limitations, no censorship. It's not about if it's realistic or not. Like, what do you want? What is it, what you really want when it comes to your life? Maybe taking into account now what happens in the world. What is it that you want? It comes to your health, to your relationship. And as before, just keep it moving. There will stuff pop up that makes no sense, that's fine. There will also stuff pop up that will make sense. It doesn't have to be realistic. Just let the mind flow. What's on your mind? What do you want? What do you really want? What is it deep inside that you want? Down there in the subconscious part. What comes up there? Give it another minute. Now the cool stuff is coming because you get slowly empty. What do you want? You can freely choose. Nobody's gonna hold you back. Nobody's gonna judge you. Nobody's gonna criticize you. It's just for you. What do you want? What do you really want when you can choose freely? Another 10 seconds. Sprinting to the finish line. Be bold. What do you want? Nobody's gonna read it. Can be funny. So here we go. Wonderful. This is for the next time. Now we have two pieces of paper. I didn't do one because I was guiding you. Now what I want you to do is take them like side by side, okay? And scan the first one. You don't have to read like every word. Scan it on the what I have to and try to observe your body feeling. Like what happens in your body? What do you feel? And then when you're through, you do the same with the second list where it's I want to. So just scan it quickly, let the word sink in and try to perceive like what perception do you get from I want to or I have to I want to. What do you feel? Do you feel a difference? As I said, just let the word sink in. Where do you feel it in the body? Like try to get perceptive. Like, is there a special part in your body where you feel something? Then move to the other list in your own tempo. Like it doesn't have to take all the time you need. What do you feel? Is it exactly the same? Is it different? All right. You haven't moved to the second list, try to move to the second list. Maybe you want to make a note what you feel. Slowly bringing the attention back to the room. So, Any differences? Does somebody want to share? Nobody has to, but I'm just curious, is it exactly the same? Is it different? What did you observe?
So
Some people have big yes?
So when I was writing the I have to, it feels like it's pressure, you know.
Say again, I didn't.
The I have to list, I feel like I'm applying pressure on myself, and I feel pressurized when I read I have to. Whereas when I read I want to, I feel empowered. Like I feel good.
That's nice.
Yeah, I feel
that's
like
wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
For me,
thanks for sharing.
Yeah, for me it's the same actually as well. When I read I have to, it gives me a lot of pressure, and when I do, it is like a dream.
Oh, nice. It feels lighter in this way.
Yeah, exactly. Much lighter. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing. That's amazing. Anybody else has a different or the same observation?
I really felt it in my body. So looking back at list 1, I just felt like my shoulders were arched and I felt heavy, and I felt like it was my chores, it was my to-do list. And when I read back list 2, I just felt excited because it was just my passions, and it made me feel a bit sad because I want to go and do list 2, but for things sort of, I want to basically travel and I can't. But the lists were just so different just through that change of word, but it just, where your thoughts create your feelings, your whole body felt different.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I mean, it's normal that we will have stuff on list 2 that are, as I said, it's not about censorship. It's just big that maybe at this point it seems like they're out of reach. But as we move on now, also in the session, in the webinar, you will see that actually maybe they are not so out of reach. Of course, you cannot travel to Phuket at the moment, but we will get into that. But it's wonderful how you shared like the body difference between the 2 lists. Thank you so much. Anybody else wants to share something? I read here, I feel in the chat, I feel force and tension in the first list. In the second list, I feel softness. That's also wonderful. It's really about this, like, getting also the sensors of like, okay, what's like, when I say the story we tell ourselves, it affects our body, and the story we tell ourselves has a lot to do with focus. So I was putting here the title focus, like focus is really, is a superpower to change your story. What you're focusing on really amplifies. There is this wonderful quote, which I want to show you here as a conclusion, is where focus goes, energy flows. And you probably had now a mini experience of that. Like, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on what you have to do or what you want to do? And depending on which focus you choose, you will feel another energy. And based on the energy, you will either get like intimidated or heavy, or you will get light and like, oh, I feel so much joy. I just want that this webinar finish so I can get started. And so this is really the trick. It's not about me telling you, okay, go out and do this. It's like changing this focus. And by changing the focus, you change your energy. It suddenly becomes like you want to do something. So now this was the top level. Now we're going to go into the weeds. Like, how can we translate that into like action? How can we actually amplify what's on the second list? Like, how can we now how you say, put it into an achievable step? And so we're going to write a third list now. It's not about 3 minutes continuous writing, but you can make bullet points. Like, what could help you? Like, maybe you want to pick 1 or 2 things from the I want to list, like a particular topic that is close to your heart, because I assume you have a lot of things that you want to. Like, take 1 and then ask yourself, like, what could help you? What or who could help you? Like, maybe it's also a person that could help you. And I give you again, like some minutes. Like maybe it's not about you have to push yourself on writing like crazy, but like make some bullet points. Like what could help you? Which resources could you tap in to achieve that? Like, maybe also people are resources. Maybe something in your environment, like try to be creative. Like, it's not about if it's like realistic. We can always get the unrealistic stuff out from the list later. At the moment, we're just opening the mind. We make it open. We see what comes in, what flows in. So what could help you? What or who could help you? Maybe somebody in your network could help you, maybe yourself, maybe something in your environment. Like, I like to always use this example with Phuket Clans. When I was in Phuket Clans, the food was so good, it was so healthy. You know, Stanton, I live in Zurich, like we have amazing chocolate. It's no secret, and you grow up with that. And so in the beginning, I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna survive 3 weeks without chocolate? At the end, I was completely fine because my environment was helping me. Phuket Clans was helping me. The environment was designed that my brain did not get into temptation. And I don't know if you realize that, but since this lockdown, there is this kind of strange gravitational field around the fridge. It seems like with every week it gets bigger and bigger. Like, it's not easy to have home office and work at home and have a fridge full of sweet chocolate, which is also good chocolate in Switzerland. So think what could help you. People in your environment, other resources that you lost. Catherine was writing, it is called fattening the curve. I love that. And yes, the food was amazing. I think Stanton, you should make a kitchen book or a cookbook, or you know, like that we can do that at home. That would be really helpful. So I assume you have now some things to help. So let's see what we're going to do with this. You probably have a catalog of 1, 2, 3, or maybe more. It's not a competition. So it's also showing you again the process, what you learned today. Okay, so if it doesn't come naturally to you, watch the recording and do it again another time. It's like also practice. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get concrete. So what is the smallest steps that you could do? Okay. And again, no step is too small. What I want you to do now is think about a small step. And we're going to have a challenge later. Okay. So some of you are going to share the smallest step if you feel like. And we as a community, we're going to give you advice how you can make it even smaller. And then you say like, wait, Martin, why are you holding me back? I'm not holding you back. I'm trying to show you that process over performance, because what happens a lot in this kind of sessions or a Phuket Clans, people go home and then they say, okay, I'm going to run a marathon. And then after 1 week of training or so, they give it up. And it's not about running a marathon. It's about loving to run once around the house and really love it. And then next day you feel like, yes, I felt so good when I was running around the house. I want to do it again. So the key is about making it small and making it fun. So if you look at your list of resources or people, or like, what is the smallest step you could do? Could you call somebody? Could you rearrange something in your house? Could you make it easier for you to eat healthier? Could you like go out today and shop something healthy? Okay, today is Sunday, but you know what I mean? Like, or could you get rid of some stuff in your fridge that you know it's not going to be good? Like, make it small. Make it small and make it that you can do it today. Like, it's important, this subtitle here, when are you going to do it? Not next week. Ideally, you're going to do it today. So it has to be really small because we want to have that you have today a positive experience. Okay. So anybody wants to share what the smallest step is? Nobody has to, but it's also nice to see like what other people are like tackling. As I said, write a short story. That's wonderful. So what would be a smaller step like than writing the whole short story today? Maybe you say, hey, today I want to write for 20 minutes or 10. That's achievable, you know. It's nearly impossible to fail that. And then when you do write for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or brainstorm for 10 or 20 minutes, give yourself a self-compliment. Like, we will come to that like in the next section. Like, how do you celebrate when you do the small step? Carve out 30 minutes every day to do the things that I don't want to do but wait on my mind. Taxes, yes, we know, we all have been there. I like that. Give yourself a 20-minute slot. La tormenta de ideas. Yes, ideas are cheap. Execution is everything. And so if you think about the small step, you can also quickly take your agenda and like put it in your calendar. Like, if you say, I'm gonna dedicate 20 minutes to do this small step, why you don't make a little block in the calendar when you're gonna do it? Like, make it concrete. All right, now, I want to, before we bring this to a closure, I want to bring up a very, very important reason why most of the people not living the life they want to live. And in order to show you that, I brought with me a little example of a little boy. So I see now, I have here some very funky, like little two stripes on my slide. I don't know where they're coming from, but looks nice. So the main reason why you don't try or why people not living the life they want is, I think, perfectly summarized in this little video. I hope you can hear it. If you don't hear the sound, please let me know. So, what is the reason that you don't do what you do? It's fear. It's fear. Fear is the main reason we're not living the full potential. And why do I show you this little boy? Because it exemplifies perfect what fear actually is. Fear is a story we tell ourselves. Like, look at it again. He's hanging on this rope, and he's like, when he's here, he's telling himself, this is really deep, this is full of sharks, I'm gonna die. Like, his mind goes nuts with like just like making up this story, which has nothing to do with reality. But because he believes the story, he feels the story. And because he feels, he gets like crampy and like, oh, we know all that. We all have been there. Like, you want to do something, you build up the story, you get the fear, and then you're like, you freeze and you don't do it. And so what we really have to understand that fear is the most normal thing in the world. We all have fears. Fear is one of the oldest circuits in the brain. Like, because we have fear, we are sitting here today. Because our ancestors were really, really fearful people. They were not the how you say, the Rambos and the gladiators. They were like scared to death, and because of that, they survived. So fear is a very dominant structure in the brain. It's not just, oh, the stupid fear. No, fear is like life-saving. So we all have fear, and it's normal. But what we can do, and this is what we're gonna take a quick look now, is like, okay, what are our fears? And I want to let you take a moment, like think about the challenge you're facing. Like, what is actually your fear? Think about it. What is really holding you back? Let's see, I can play a little bit music so that you give you a moment. Just think about what are you really scared of? Like, what is it? What is so dangerous about trying it? Probably first comes something obvious, some like obvious fear, and maybe if you give it a moment to think about it, it will be a bit more deeper, like, what is actually your fear? Like, what are you really scared of trying this? Like, what is the worst that could happen if you try? Think about it. What is the worst that could happen? Will you die? Will you lose all your money? What will happen? What is the worst? And also think about what could you win if you try? Like, what is the upside if you overcome your fear? And it's good to write it out, because once you have it on the paper, some people observe that actually it's just a word on a paper. A lot of people tell me then it isn't so scary anymore. It's like you say, okay, I'm scared of something, and then you write it on a paper and you read it and you're like, oh, it's just that. So what is really your fear? Becoming aware of that is really important, because only if you know what your fear is about, you're able to say, oh, okay, this is fear, I can tackle that. So I assume you probably have something. So what I want to do with you now is make a little transformation, because we always have this concept of fear is this sucks, fear is like annoying, fear is this, is that. And what I want you to like at least be open for it is the concept of fear is fun. Okay? Fear is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the physiological response of fear is very hard to distinguish between if you are having a very exciting time. If you're connecting somebody to skin measurements, to heartbeat measurements, to sweat measurements of making love, you will have troubles to distinguish the physiological signals from somebody having a panic attack. I think it's very interesting. So you have the same physiological arousal, but in one moment you're scared to death, and in the other moment you're having the best time of your life. And the body goes through the same roller coaster. So what is a game changer if you can understand that fear can actually be fun, you know? What I did some time ago, I changed my story of like saying, okay, fear is not just bad, fear can also be exciting. So I started to live my life according to the following quote. Is it really dangerous or is it just fear? And if it's just fear, I have to do it. So that's the rule. If I find something in my daily life and I'm like, okay, is this really stupid? Is it really dangerous or is it just fear? And if it's just fear, I have to do it. And how can I do it? Okay, you can ask yourself, can I make it smaller? Let me quickly, just like now these two, I'm gonna quickly stop sharing just to see if I can make away these two strikes. Let's share again. I think now they should have been gone. So, can I make the step smaller? If you say, okay, I want to try something out, can I make it smaller? Can I get help? Can I just try it? Or can I make it fun? Like if you're scared of something, it often happens, I don't know if somebody of you experienced it, that once you do it, you realize it's actually not so dangerous. You have this, like the little boy on the road, you're like, oh, this is like horrible, I'm gonna die. And then you try it and like, wait, it was not that bad. So the story is often much bigger than what is actually the situation about. So what you could do is, if now you have something on your paper that you want to try and you still realize, oh, it's too big, I'm not able to do that, make it smaller. Make it smaller, smaller, smaller until you feel comfortable. And then once you feel comfortable, you can make it bigger again. You can slowly increase the threshold. So the fifth conclusion about fear is really, fear is fun. Okay? Fear can be really fun. And once you get on a taste of that, you will realize it's a game changer, because suddenly you say, wait, it's just fear, I'm gonna try it. I mean, what can happen? What is the worst that can happen? And it becomes a little game, like don't take yourself too serious, just look at it as a game, and then suddenly you're gonna have fun trying new things out. Now, so much about fear. I don't want to end this session with fear. I want to end it with something much better and something that we often underestimate. As I said, I grew up in Switzerland, and Swiss society is, how should I say, they are very, you should not fall out, you should not show off, you should not like be proud of yourself. That's a typical Swiss threat. And I think this is not optimal from a neuroscientific point of view. Why? Because think about it, if you were, once you were a kid and you learned to ride a bicycle, what did your parents do? They said all the time, hey, well done, good, more. They gave you compliments. And at one point we started to give up to give ourselves compliments. So what you have to understand, if your brain wants to learn something, you have to give it a positive reinforcement. If you do something, a small step, you have to tell yourself that it was good what you did. And by doing that, you're going to release dopamine. And by releasing dopamine, your brain knows, okay, I should do more of that. Now, how can you do it? Well, very easy. What you can do, I'll show you a little trick, but that's just one trick. You can put your arm like this. Try it at home, like put your arm straight away from you. And now you bend it like more than 90 degrees. And now you make like this. And probably you start laughing now. And that's exactly what you want. You want to tell your brain that's good. So what I want to think about is, how will you celebrate yourself? How will you celebrate self-love? And I recommend not doing this with Swiss chocolate. Try to find something, it's also a good celebration, but try to find a gesture or a wording that you tell yourself, like, well done, that was good. Try to give yourself a hug, or try to find a victory pose that you say, yes, that was good. And and try it out. Like for yourself, don't show it anybody. Like you have now something on your list, a small step that you're gonna do today. And when you do it, celebrate it, like physically, like really say, yes, I did it. And then like try to observe the emotions you have in your body. Try to see, okay, what happens? And keep doing that. I do it a lot when I have to make a phone call that I'm like putting off, or I have to, I don't know, make a summary or something that I don't feel like doing. And then I do it, taxes, I do the 30 minutes, and then I'm just like, yes. And I'm celebrating it, and I feel good about it. So think about like, how will you celebrate yourself? Try to find your own, let's say, victory pose or self-loving pose. And maybe it changes over time, but it's good to have that. So the last conclusion of today is like, really, emotions are making new synapses, okay? It goes in both directions. If you have a traumatic experience or a very beautiful, you're not gonna learn something if it's just flat, if it's just information. Like once you're emotional, you learn much more. So try to make yourself emotional, try to give yourself a compliment and like really say, well done. It will really help you to not just like stay on one step, but like make one step after another. So that was all from my side. I thank you very much. Here are like my contact information if you want to learn more from my work or get in contact on social. I do this kind of things now more and more, like as everybody's locked down and I cannot go around and give workshops or keynotes. This is like how everything is moving on. Or if you have additional questions to today's session, or if you want to have a one-on-one session or whatever, just shoot me a line, or to Stanton, which I think is still here around. And if you have any other questions, like this is now also the moment for Q&A. I'm happy to stick around. I have a little bit not so Swiss timing today, so I'm having time. If anybody like wants to pop a question or give feedback, I'm happy to try to answer and help you.
I just want to say thank you. I thought that was just brilliant. Made so many notes and so many things that just need to get on and do it, because they're not scary. They're just being honest about how you actually feel. So thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. So happy to hear that. Yes, often we believe that, like the little boy, that changing our mindset or doing something is like such a big deal, and then we have it on paper. It's actually, or if you speak it out or you try it, you realize, oh, it's actually possible. So happy to hear that.
Wanted to just ask you something. Go on, Esther.
Yeah.
You just mentioned something before, which we missed. What was it about?
How it helped you, how you help yourself to how you help yourself, right?
Yeah.
But like how you help
for self-love. The things that you do for self-love, like how, you know, you mentioned something about 30 minutes. Was that meditating? Sorry, we missed that part.
Well, I meditate every day. That helps also to connect and celebrate self-love. It took me years to actually, not just on a superficial level to do it, but what I do is I really, when I do something and I feel like this was good, I tell myself, yes, Martin. And I make this kind of probably in sports psychology, you see that a lot, that this kind of victory poses, like one of the classic was the Becker Faust in tennis. Another one in recent year was, what was the captain of the American soccer player, the Rinpoche. She was always making this kind of view form as a victory pose. And so for me, I have different like self-celebration things, but I'm really doing like yes, or sometimes I'm also doing this. And it's something of I tell you, in the beginning when I was starting doing that, I felt so weird. I was like, now I'm like having multiple personalities, or I don't know, but I started to like it, and it helps me actually a lot to just remind myself, hey, this was good, because I think too much during the day or in our times, we are harsh with ourselves. We're like, oh, again, I didn't do it. Oh, again, I was snacking, or like we're judging ourselves. And I think we have to consciously like give a counterforce of like also celebrate ourselves for the stuff we did good. And so this is what I try to do, yeah.
I just wanted to ask if you follow anyone on social media for like inspiration on self-love, or anyone you look up to who actually like really focuses on self-care.
I follow different people on self-care and self-love. I like Brené Brown because she is like definitely somebody about vulnerability, very, very open. I like Mel Robbins, but I also like a lot the Stoicism philosophy. There are like interesting, how you say, social media channels or quotes, because I think in Stoicism is a lot about responsibility and self-love. Yes.
Martin?
The other one, right? Write it quickly in the chat. Brené Brown. I think it's spelled like this. She's from Texas. Yes.
Hey, Martin.
Hey, Chris. Hey, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Quick one. Is there a connection between like physically doing something and the connections in your brain? So the process of patting yourself on the back, does that have a stronger effect on creating neural pathways than just saying, oh, well done, Chris?
I believe so. I believe that the learning is a body experience. There is like somatic learning, not just cognitive learning. And so I believe if you make a physical movement that makes you feel nice, you also experience another hormonal like release in your whole system, also in the brain. What I have to point out, and I think that's really important, that like one of the most watched TED Talks that you can find on the TED webpage about the power posing, that it was a research done about if you stand like this, or if you stand like crumbled like this, that it affects like you on many levels. It was never replicated. So it's like not so trivial that you can just put numbers on it and like say, okay, it is measurable in a scientific way, but they are research that they are able to show it. So also neurolinguistic programming of saying, okay, well done, Martin, good. There are like research on both sides saying that it works or it doesn't. I strongly believe it does. And I strongly believe that the most important thing is that you find what feels good for you. And I'm not talking about chocolate again. Okay, so that's very important. Like, of course, you can get a drink, you can get chocolate, and that feels good. I'm not talking about this kind of stimulus. I'm talking about with your body, like how you celebrate, how you find the body experience that is generated by yourself. That's the trick. And I think that definitely triggers a better learning. I mean, you probably know from your practice in the gym or playing the guitar, in the moment it feels nice, you learn better. That's definitely where you want to go.
Chris, just a quick one. When I was doing your aqua aerobics, I don't like aqua aerobics, but when I was doing your classes, because of the music that you would play, I suddenly absolutely loved it and wanted to come and do it every day. So I don't know whether kind of having particular pieces of music that you celebrate to kind of helps, but it certainly worked for me with your classes.
So it had absolutely nothing to do with the class at all?
No,
nothing
just the music. And you're dancing along the side of the pool.
But it's a good point, Michelle, because a lot of people ask me like, how did I get into running, and they don't like running. And I always say, yeah, why you don't go just take some music into the ears and go dancing while moving, okay? A lot of people like dancing. A lot of people have a connection to certain kind of music. So make a playlist with the music that moves you, go out, and now anyhow, nobody can go dancing in a physical space. So go into the forest and see how you can like running to the beat that feels like dancing. And that could be a kind of a backdoor into running. And I have that sometimes, that after 2-3 hours of running, I feel like, whoa, this feels like when I was going to raves in the old time. So because it just like moved the body in a similar way. So music is definitely a very good door opener.
Anybody else, guys, got a question for Martin?
Well, great. If there are no other questions, I just wanted to thank you for staying around. It was a big pleasure. And yes, I hope that you can use the stuff you learned about yourself today. And I'm wishing everybody a lot of fun with the integration of it.
Martin, thank you so much for today. More than you know. You know, even me at 55, to start doing this, it's better late than never. I'm still one of those that looks at myself in the mirror, and rather than do self-love, I do exactly the opposite. So now at 55, I'm going to try some of these tactics and be a little bit more positive, and not and do the self-love rather than the self-beat up. So never too late, and I'm so happy. And again, thanks very much. And guys, do follow Martin, get in touch with him. He's been over at Stanford University, of course, in America, at some of the best American universities. So you know, you can trust everything, because he's got a lot of American influence in there. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you so much, Stan, and thanks for sharing that. You know, I think it's a classic, and what I also observe with people like you who are so warm with everybody at Phuket Plans, it's a classic that we somehow not naturally can apply the same loving spirit that we give to people to ourselves. And so what is also a good trick is like, treat yourself like somebody you have to take care of. Like, treat yourself as a guest, as one of your guests, or, you know, like, and that is, it's so funny, like how fast we forget about it. I know it myself, like it somehow doesn't come naturally. So I'm very grateful if I could like give you a little input or inspiration on that. So yes, it was a big pleasure.
Love it. Thank you, Martin. And guys, I'll put up a recorded version of this in a couple of days, so you can go back if anybody missed the beginning, and listen to Martin's his personal story in case you missed that. It's quite amazing. And if you do get a chance to sign up with him, he does coaching to people all over the world. So it's definitely a wonderful thing to take advantage of. Some of the people that have used him as a coach and as a strategist have written me basically life-changing letters and life-saving letters in some cases. So Martin, I want to thank you so much for your story, and for continuing to help people over on that side of the water and all sides of the water. So thank you so much.
Thank you.